My name is Jennie Geisler. I'm with the Erie Times-News, and I'm here with a bunch of people who have become my friends over the last few weeks as we worked on a project together to bring you a surprise story on Sunday of some amazing things that they have found at the Erie Art Museum that nobody even knew were here. Some of them are pretty amazing and recognizable stuff, and these guys are really super excited to share it with you all. They've been working their tails off trying to get it all organized, documented, digitized, photographed, and trying to focus and kind of come up with a philosophy for their collection. And anyway, I want you to know that on Sunday you can read quite about it, including a list of some of the most famous works. And now you can listen to them, introduce themselves to you, and a little bit about what they do here, and starting with the brand new executive editor, Joshua Helmer.
Yes, hello everybody, I'm Joshua Helmer. I'm the new executive director. I come from the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and I've been here for about 4 months now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Susan Barnett. I'm the curator of the Erie Art Museum, so I work with art, exhibitions, and kind of bridging to the public. I've been here for 1.5 years now.
I'm Tori Pesta. I'm the registrar here. I work with the permanent collections and I keep records of all of our art here, and I've been here since January.
I'm James Pearson. I'm a museum framer and preparator, which means I do anything I have to do to get things ready to be displayed. And I've been here for about 6 years.
All right. Well, they've assembled some of the works that they were thrilled to find, and they were going to kind of show them off, maybe let you see some of them. Not all of them. A lot of the really great stuff they found can't be in the light all the time. So what's going to happen with a lot of this art is, the Picassos and the Matisses and everything aren't going to all go up on the wall at the same time and stay there forever. There's a rotating collection highlights area that they're going to be, unveiling stuff as it goes over the years. But anyway, here's some beautiful stuff, and that they can tell you more about than I can.
Listening to you say those names gets me all flustered. I'm all hot and bothered now.
Could I just do a brief intro to what's laid out here?
Yeah.
So often when we find things in our collection, they have been just framed by whoever owned them before. So maybe some collector had this. And for instance, this is a Norman Rockwell print. We have all 4 seasons. And you can see that the mat board is acidic, and it also just does not have conservation backing. So this is going to be one that James is going to take apart and reframe over time. This is really a special piece that we have in the collection. Does anybody remember the date on this one? It's Karachi. It's
early 17th century.
Okay, so yeah, this one's been around for a while. This came from James Baldwin along with a lot of our collection, and it's an original drawing that makes it about almost 300 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And fortunately, this has been pretty well preserved. It's just, it's framed for a collector's home, and so we'll be redoing that. James has been opening a lot of these and getting them ready for the Highlights exhibition. So this is a photogravure by Edward Curtis, who was active at the beginning of the 20th century. He documented the disappearing tribes, and there's controversy about about how he did that, but he took really beautiful images that otherwise we would have no idea. So this is showing a Zuni woman and the ornaments that she was wearing. Photogravure is taking a photograph and turning it into an etching. So it's actually a really rich kind of printing process, and it's also very permanent.
So these have not been on display. Sorry, somebody's trying to catch up with.
I believe some of the Curtises, 1 or 2 might have been on display when they first came in, but they have not been exhibited as a full exhibit.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that this has not sure about the Karachi. Now and then some of these works came in and they might have been in a new accession show for a little bit, but just a few examples of them. So
one of the things that we've started to think about is the Erie Art Museum was doing a lot of traveling exhibitions for a long time, 10 to 15 a year. So a lot of our time and energy as an institution was going towards that, not actually towards conserving, researching, and displaying our permanent collection, which surprisingly is quite strong. So for the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a lot of stuff coming out here that belongs to Erie.
this is one of the prints that I am really excited about. This is by James McNeill Whistler. It's called Unsafe Tenement. He's really known as an early modernist. He actually started doing very abstract paintings, and I feel like this is kind of an example of a very unidealized scene that would have been kind of new at the time. And I think one of the things that's very interesting about this is he did 4 states of this print. A lot of times with etching, artists would go back in and rework the plate and make it into something different. In the first state, there's a woman who's standing right here. You can see her feet and you can see the hem of her dress, and then she was turned into a pitchfork. So I think it's just lovely that little ghost image is still there in the plate.
Amazing.
These 2 images were on display recently. We had a show of Prints That Bite, protest imagery across 2 centuries. So Goya, he somehow survived 4 monarchies. I'm not quite sure how. It was also during the Spanish Inquisition, and you can see this priest is probably not portrayed very favorably. Anyways, so he worked in etching. Most of his work was kind of hidden until these series were hidden.
He didn't let these out until after he
died.
Right?
27. Yeah, that's part of how he survived. Yeah, there was 27 of these were sold, and then he stopped selling them, and they kind of went into secret until after he died.
Just incredibly dark, though.
Yeah. So this is the Capriccio series, and they kind of start out they're very surreal and dreamlike, and then they're also they connect to political issues that he would have. Yeah, it's amazing he survived. And then Kitty, it's pronounced Colwitz. This is a self-portrait. She was such a wonderful printmaker. The richness of the lines of this plate. World War I was just really, I don't know, it was a difficult part of her life. She was in Germany in World War I, and she saw starvation, and a lot of hardship, and a lot of her work's about that, and about just protest against power.
So while we're uncovering a lot of really interesting things and very big name artists, we also have a lot of stuff that is now going to be considered for deaccessioning and what actually belongs in a museum. Since we started off as an art club and then turned into a museum, we took in pretty much anything that was ever offered us, and now it's time to kind of weed the garden a little. So behind you, you'll actually see a table of things that are accessioned objects in our collection that just kind of as a first pass, we've already deemed not really worthy of being in the art museum.
One of my favorites is probably this nice little zip right side up. Cartoon map of Erie.
So we've decided that our collection is not going to house reproductions, regardless of the historical connection. It's not our place. We're in our museum.
And the thing for us, because our facility is as small as it is and our collection is as large as it is, for every single thing that we leave in here, it actually takes time and resource away from taking care of the stuff that really, really deserves and needs to be preserved, like the Whistler and things like that.
There's another example along those same lines. We took a lot of donations from the Historical Society when they were deaccessioning, as well as from the library, and here is a book on horse breeding. And, it's a lovely historic book covered with mold that we really shouldn't have in our collection. Some kind of ordinary Oriental ceramics, something that might be nice on a Thanksgiving table, but I can't imagine really telling a story with it in the museum. Here is a signed and numbered reproduction of some birds with a decorative matting. A historic photograph in a lovely frame that, some antique store would probably love to have that. Josh, would you like to speak about your favorite object?
It was one of the first things that I saw when we walked through storage because it's pretty hard not to miss. And I was like, what is that, my friends? I think we want to look into it. It might be time for that to go. So they gave me the favor of putting it on the table today.
And above that object is another one of Josh's favorites.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing for museums to think about. That shovel was used for the breaking ground of our new building, but it's basically a shovel bought from Lowe's that somebody spray painted gold and yet was brought into our collection and received an accession number. And in terms of quality, originality, being a snapshot of the creative spirit of Erie at the time, it is not deemed a collections object.
So part of this process has been knowing what you don't need to know what you need in the permanent
collection. And that's kind of how
collection.
we started. I'll quote James, who kind of put it the best way. He said, we're actually starting from two ends of the spectrum, where we are now isolating about 200 really great things that we know we need to take care of, and at the same time we're doing the walkthrough and pulling the stuff that we know just really doesn't belong here. And then as we develop our guidelines, we'll kind of get pop-up questions as we're dealing with that big chunk of stuff that exists in the middle.
And the process of finding these things that definitely don't belong is helping us narrow what does. So we're just a step at a time. There's another object that I just found on the shelf the other day. It looks like something that, maybe would have been on display at a cemetery or an altar or something. And it just a piece of cast metal. This is a piece of folk art, but it's basically an old duck basket. This is something that was accessioned by the museum before it was even a museum, when it was still the Erie Art Club and affiliated with the library. This is probably one of our first, it's at least one of our first 50 accessions. And it really is a beautiful painting by a somewhat known regional artist. But it has very serious damage here, and there's a question of whether it is worth our limited resources to have this preserved. This is on the list of proposals for deaccession. This is a box that we just found on the shelf, and it may be broken pre-Columbian tripod bowl, and it may be a mystery box.
Ooh.
So we thought we would just open that and see what was inside.
If it's another skull, I quit.
That's another skull. I get to travel to Mexico.
It's going to have to be a small skull, but
Even worse.
What is it? Tori's never seen this, has she?
Are you kidding me?
so it appears to be.
These are actual diapers.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's broken pre-Columbia pottery wrapped in flowered diapers.
Oh.
Which, just so everybody knows, is not modern day conservation practice.
No, that's not how you do that.
But they are absorbent.
Sure.
That's hysterical.
Sure.
So one thing we also hope is to give people a sense of what we're dealing with in terms of sheer volume of stuff and what it's going to take. Because this is going to be a process that's going to go on for years, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. We figured we'd give you a little behind the scenes look into our actual storage.
Yes.
Which is a little terrifying. Also, it's pretty rare for museums to be as transparent as we're going to be about this, but we figure we are a small local museum, so we might as well just start the conversation. What is art? Who gets to decide? And how are we going to collect for our city going forward?
Absolutely.
If anybody's really interested in the diaper box, shoot me an email. And make your case for why we should keep it. So actually, I think it'd be great if you guys just kind of walked in first, and we'll follow along.
Stop me where you want me.
Oh, go for it.
Well, just go ahead and kind of shoot the walls on your way in.
Yeah.
You can see that we have things that are stacked too high, that are all mixed together. There hasn't been a lot of. I look forward to. I think we all look forward to putting like with like. We're planning to put in some shelving that's going to allow us to store things more efficiently and group things better. But we're also looking forward to making some space by taking away some of the things that just don't belong
I
here.
think it's also really important to get a shot at what our 2D storage looks like behind you. Normally you would not squeeze a bunch of paintings like that together as tight as those are. And some of those racks are 2 and 3 paintings deep behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Myself and a team of interns this past summer went through and documented all of these. There's roughly 1,200 2D works of art.
Took pictures for the first time, measured them, quick condition reports.
And
Wow.
it was really fun getting the large paintings back up where they are now.
I bet.
It's also part of how we started to find our highlights. These pictures were coming through to me. I'd go through them at night, 1 or 2 in the morning, and you could start to recognize some things that were very, very significant and say, okay, can you pull these? Can you pull this? Can you pull that? Can I see it? And then, you start to find things like the big Chuck Close right there, and you realize you got some stuff.
So what is this? What am I looking at? What is the Chuck Close?
This is a really unusual work by Chuck Close. He has a neurological issue that keeps him from being able to recognize faces. And so he started doing self-portraits to study his own face. And that it led to a long series. This is a really unusual piece in that he worked with an Asian company to create a weaving. Most of his works, he breaks down the image into tiny pixels, and each pixel becomes an abstract shape in and of itself. And weaving is just really well equipped to do pixels. So it's, and this would have been done really before digital, I think.
So Chuck is one of the most famous living 20th century artists today. His paintings aren't just this size, they're like 20 feet by 20 feet.
Oh, wow.
And when you stand really far back, it looks like a face, but when you get up close, they're just all of these large dots and squares put together, so you actually get to see faces the way that Chuck sees them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little later on when he's actually starting to play around with textiles instead of using paint.
Very
It's a
cool.
really cool thing to have.
Yeah. So will you put this out? Like, what is your
Oh,
time?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's
Okay.
absolutely the plan. It needs to be reframed and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it will definitely go out.
We were tempted to put it out right away, but it really does need low light levels. Putting it, next to the lobby where the sunshine coming in wasn't such a good idea.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's tempting to just go through the shelves and say, oh, that doesn't belong here, and just take it out. But we really need to do a lot of research as we do this, because contemporary art, so much of it is conceptual, and so it's about the idea as much as it's about the object. And here's a story for Josh to tell.
We've got a couple of good ones, and this is the thing that I really have to stress it. Our collection is incredibly poorly researched. I mean, that's like a curator's dream. It's basically like, hey, Susan, here's your books. Go have fun. As an example, as I was talking about, when we take a first pass of storage and we're going to start to immediately deaccession things, and I want that list of the stuff that's obviously not art museum material, I would reference the plastic box filled with cars.
Possibly plastic,
It's right here.
possibly glass. Because it is heavy like glass.
But once we did some research, Susan came back to me and was like, that artist is in MoMA, and it's basically a mock-up for what he really does, which is put full-size cars into concrete. So research helps. There's going to be all kinds of stuff like that. Another example is, if you don't mind looking up there, we've got this green furniture.
Oh, yeah.
And once again, through some research, also in MoMA, and when stacked together, creates a sculpture.
And Lucia asked us to say the Museum of Modern Art. Anyway.
That is so cool.
So this is something that we'll probably have out during the highlight show,
absolutely.
and people can see it as an abstract form against the wall, and then they can take it down and sit on it. Another object that I ran across in storage that my initial thought was, we need to get rid of this immediately. This is endangering the rest of the collection. And yes, it's a big name artist, but this is not something we should keep.
I want to stress that this was not stored like this originally.
And I'd also like to add that Susan did not have the same feeling about the human skull that we have. So she felt very strongly about this.
I felt very strongly about the human skull, but I knew that it was going to be more of a problem to move that out of the collection.
So this is it's a piece of honey that is actually screen printed on. If you look really closely, you can see the lines, and it's made to look like a postcard. It's a very big name artist,
Joseph
Boys. However, we were still considering this for deaccession just for the fact that it was a danger to our collection. We can't have honey, which would attract pests, which would then attract bigger pests, and it was just a danger to our collection. However, we did recently realize that we have more of this collection. So we have a wooden postcard here and his magnetic postcard.
So essentially it's a series.
Oh,
And we weren't fully aware that we had the series before.
That's so cool.
So now we're going
You
to
show the other side of that too.
There.
Yeah.
As well as the plastic cars.
I would have guessed a lasagna sheet with the honey.
So,
Yeah.
so then when you put
Fancy,
these
fancy
three objects together, it becomes really interesting.
Yeah.
It becomes a story. It's more than just a really scary piece of honey that
So
was.
how will you display that? Like, how will you put that on display? A piece
That's
of honey.
Good question.
I would imagine it would be in a case.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But it would be something to put some thought into.
And something else we're going to do that, we're going to reach out to our peers that, other places have the honey postcard.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
How do they show it?
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
What's the best way to store it?
It is a sticky situation.
Stop.
Sorry. That's what I do.
Oh boy. Well, this is really cool. So tell me a little bit, like I was asking earlier, about how you guys research this stuff.
So we said earlier, a lot of the big name artists, they're able to be, Googled. You look up Joseph Boys online and you'll find a lot of his other work. You'll find, bio, you'll find where else his
Combing
artists.
through the information.
He's still going.
He's still going. He'll never stop. But a lot of the smaller, regional artists, they're not online. If they are, we're lucky and we're able to find things like biography and their other works. If they're not, then it's a matter of going through our paper records and then reaching out to outside experts. We've already reached out to a few professors at some colleges to take a look at some of our works, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah.
One thing that John Vanko did that's also really helpful is for the 50 years that he was here, he kept files on artists that he was interested in. So most of the artists that are in the collection, we have newspaper clippings and catalogs and things like that, and that's very helpful for basic research as well.
And then one of our next steps, because the highlights research is going to take a long time, I asked Susan, I would like to have a highlights catalog made for this collection where everything is high-res picture, 250-word descriptions and discussions of each object, that kind of thing. Where it's going to get tricky is in the middle. When we already established highlights, we already established the stuff that doesn't be here, and it starts to get to the local artist community who we have taken in stuff from them for 50 years. And the ones that are still alive, the question is going to be, here we have 9 things made by you. Which one is the best example of your work? We will keep that one, and then we will probably return the others. I mean, because space is an issue for us, and also we're going to want to grow our collection in a lot of different ways.
So how many pieces of art would you say you have?
We have roughly 8,500 works of art.
Wow. So this is going to be
Objects.
Objects.
So this is going to be quite a long process to do just the highlights.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, if you think it took an entire summer with a team of
7
people to do 1,200 objects, and that's not even research on them. That's just taking them out, measuring them, and photographing them.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's going to take a long time.
And the thing is, since a lot of these big name pieces that we're finding haven't been shown in a long time, if ever, they are taking some serious TLC. They've been, and not that anybody did anything wrong, but the way that they were framed and matted and preserved in the past is actually very harmful for them now, and that's what James has been doing. So feel free to a little bit about just the general process of unframing Warhols and all kinds of stuff. And
Oh, well, yeah. I have to do some research too. I mean, they're looking at it from a cultural and aesthetic and historical and artistic point of view, and similarly, I need to know as much as I possibly can about what it physically is in order to properly handle it, because I'm the one who's touching things that are worth more than my life.
James's life is priceless.
What are some of those objects that have been especially fraught that you've handled recently?
Well, the most interesting one was another Curtis photograph. It was called an orotone, or he wanted to modestly rename this the Kurt tone. But I don't know if that caught on. He was really good at marketing himself, but it's a piece of glass. The photograph is printed onto the back of a piece of glass, and then the entire back is coated with this mixture of bronze powder and toxic chemicals. And so it looks really beautiful. It looks like you're looking at a gold landscape when you see it through the front. But I wanted to make sure I didn't break that.
And
Or poison yourself.
knowing what things are made out of is also very important for storage concerns, because like the honey, how do we store this so that it doesn't, affect other works of art? Because some people might consider this a little bit more 2D-ish. It's a postcard. It is 3D though, and it was previously stored around works on paper, and you just think like honey near paper is not a good combination.
No.
But also in terms of things that we have, fabric, we have a few textile pieces that also include metals, and it's metal mixed with fabric automatically deteriorates both. They both just react against each other. So it's a question that a lot of museums deal with, and just how to properly store things that want to destroy themselves.
This is one of the other things too that I think is just important for me to add is I'm sure a lot of people know that the Erie Art Museum has had pretty significant financial trouble for the past 5 or 6 years, and what happens is funds that just go to keeping this place operational are taken away from actually taking care of these things. It's pretty warm in here right now, and it's a little humid, and all that kind of stuff is not good for these objects. One of the really nice things though, when we pulled our first 100, I reached out to some donors and said, hey, we've got these things, they're in really poor condition, they need love, and somebody delivered a check within an hour, an anonymous donor, to take care of the first 100. So yeah,
Amazing.
a lot of it goes to funding and how serious we get about it, but we have to take care of our best stuff. It's like priority number one. It's what we do. Our job is to care for things.
Yeah. And when you look at this whole row, anything that's framed with a mat and a backing and glass, I would say 98% of everything that would be in there was done with materials that really are quite damaging. They didn't know it at the time, but wood, which seems like a pretty inert material, is actually full of a lot of reactive chemicals that just continue to change and react and deteriorate over time, especially when it's hot, especially when it's humid.
Looks like I found another reproduction.
Taking that one out.
Goodbye, Mr. Eagle.
Goodbye,
Our
Mr.
pieces
Eagle.
of paper are all made out of wood pulp, so
Yeah,
that stuff will take the art and turn it yellow. It'll become brittle and stained, and it ultimately destroys it. So, but that represents a huge expense because that good material is not cheap.
Yeah, and that was one of the interesting things when we saw when we unframed our Warhol. There was actually a framer sticker on the back of it that prevented the acidity from the paper that it was attached to from seeping through. So the back of the Warhol is super burned brown, except for where the sticker is, which is just this perfect white square. The good news is the front of it's still okay, and James has already taken care of it.
I just pulled a horrible example. I just saw this on the shelf, pulled it out to see what it was. So we've got corrugated backing. It looks like somebody was active possibly with rubber cement. James is going to see when he gets into this. This is a piece by Georges Rouault. This is a really big name artist. And you can also see the brown edge on the mat board. When this is unframed, we're going to see, you can actually see it on the print, there's going to be a brown stain from the acid migration from the edge of that mat board. So yeah, some of these works, and it's not entirely anybody's fault that they didn't know about conservation framing, but now our emphasis really is on what's called preventive conservation as much as possible, to keep things from getting worse, to keep things in their original condition as much as possible.
Or if it came straight from a gallery or a dealer, it cuts into their bottom line to use premium materials.
Right.
And while Susan was pulling that, I found another one that's backed with corrugated cardboard. And
everywhere.
And cardboard is just really, really awful to any work of art.
So people at home, don't back your stuff with cardboard.
And you will notice, and I've had people ask questions about this before, we put cardboard in between the frames, and that's okay because it's not touching the actual work of art itself. That is just to protect the frame itself so it doesn't get scuffed up and we don't have to reframe it just because the frame got destroyed by other frames. What matters is what is actually physically touching the art, and if that is cardboard, we have a problem.
Well, this is cool. Josh, somebody asked earlier, what actually happened to the skull? What made?
Skull goes back to Philadelphia. When specifically?
I'm driving down with her to Philadelphia on the 4th of October.
There you go.
And she will be presented to the Mexican consulate on the 5th.
Oh.
And then from there, she'll be sent by diplomatic pouch back to Mexico.
Yeah, our contact was on vacation, so Skull had to wait a little while.
Okay.
Yes.
But she is packed and ready to go. I am not packed yet.
So you will be taking her.
Yes, I will.
Very cool.
Susan just brought, I think, an example of.
Yeah, I wanted to show you this because we were talking about corrugated cardboard, and here's a case where the corrugated cardboard has actually created a print on the backing of this piece. This is a Daumier print. He used the standard media of the time, so these went out in various newspaper publications. So they're actually printed. You can see the type on the back. And you can also see that it had a previous mat that was very acidic, and then in addition they used acidic adhesive to adhere it to the backing board, and that has come through the fronts.
And the reason that we are keeping this, and this is also true of a lot of big museums, you keep stuff that's in really great condition, you keep a few things that are in really poor condition as a teaching tool. It's great to roll these out to students and things like that and show them if they're very safe to handle, because essentially it's already been completely cooked.
And it's a wonderful image too.
Yeah.
Now, some of the things that we're showing you are actually examples of Friday the
Next Friday.
28th is hands-on, and people are invited to come to the museum. There's a fee for it, but it's a very reasonable fee, and actually we'll give you gloves and you will get to touch the art.
And you will go around to specific tables. James will be conserving a Louise Nevelson piece out in front of everybody. Susan will be talking through various types of prints. I will discuss the Whistler with people. We'll have some magnifying glasses. It's all about making our collection accessible to the public. How often you get to hold a Whistler? Not often. The Warhol will also be out. There's a couple other good things. So check it out.
I'll have a table with the Curtises as well.
James was talking about the Orotone, another kind of big issue framing project that he got thrown at him over the last few weeks was this Nevelson print, which is called, the dealers call it a lead intaglio. What it is Nevelson, who's primarily a sculptor who works in wood, created a wood matrix. They pressed lead over that to create embossed and debossed squares, and then it was assembled into a kind of a pyramid called Great Wall. And it was kind of an interesting idea, deciding to combine lead and paper.
Well, the lead was glued to paper. And who was it who discovered this? You?
Oh, yeah, it was a piece that I found one day when I was just kind of going through things to see.
Surfing the database.
How
Yes.
bad it was. No, it was in here, and I was like,
okay.
this is a Nevelson. I was very excited, and I saw that two of the pieces of lead were sitting on the bottom of the frame. They'd actually fallen off because the adhesive had given way. So
Luckily, they didn't bend or break when they fell inside of the frame, because the lead is still very soft, and like when James has been reframing it and fixing it, they're bendy.
It also could have stained the paper or torn the paper, and it didn't. And James consulted with a conservator who he's worked with for quite a bit, and he's got some good advice, and he has successfully managed to
And the
get
Nevelson
them.
is now hanging on the wall downstairs. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but he's going to do a little bit more work on it because a few of the other original panels seem to be loose, and so that will be going on during hands-on.
Yep.
People can see him do it.
Please don't feed the James, though.
Or
Only
sneeze.
after he's done working. After he's done working, you can feed the James. Not during. Not during.
Anything else you want to add, Jenny? Do you want to pitch your story again for Sunday?
All this and more will be in the paper on Sunday. You can read about it. You can cut it out and stick it to cardboard, and it'll fall apart in about 5 years.
All right,
You know,
thanks,
actually,
guys.
the paper they used back then was rag paper.
The newsprint was
So
actually
it
good
lasts.
quality then. Yeah, yeah. This wouldn't have lasted 100 years with today's newspaper, that's for sure.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.